Hello, welcome to the new view. We've got a new view now to show you. It'll be Diane Perlman talking about her struggles and dilemmas with her homeowners association and all that she's dug up about the whole sordid process of it. So everyone that's with our team today, most all of us, just say hello and who you are. Please start.
Hi, I'm Ginger Metro from Gainesville, Florida.
I'm
I'm
Liz,
Carol Bouvier from California.
I'm Liz Gould from Winchester, Massachusetts, 7 miles north of Boston.
And hello, I'm Marilyn Langlois from Richmond, California.
And Alana Hartsock from just over the last Appalachian mountain ridge from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So Diane has been a longtime friend of mine, and she has struggled with some health issues she might mention around this mold problem. And there's lots of moldy buildings in this world. And she's probably lived in half of them, jokingly. But she and mold have been an issue for quite a while, and trying to get remediation through those in charge, homeowners associations of condos where she's been living, is proven to be quite a saga. So, Diane, go right ahead. I'm going to get your PowerPoint up now.
Okay. All right. So I'm Diane Perlman, and I live in Washington, D.C. I moved here from Philadelphia when my kids were grown because I thought this is where I could do the most good. So I bought a condo. I wanted to be near the think tanks because I wanted to start a policy institute. So I spent months and months looking and going to open houses. And I found this building, which is right around the corner from Brookings, Carnegie, American Enterprise Institute, Middle East Institute. And it's within blocks of several of the world's major think tanks. And also, I just want to thank everyone for this opportunity to present and to put this all together, because it's a wild story, but my story is a microcosm that I think the dynamics are identical to different stories in different domains.
I
Anyway,
recognize this building. I stayed with you there many times, as have other friends of yours. Now you were on, is it the fifth floor? And you
fourth
had all
floor.
these long windows, beautiful windows. Can you
No,
point out
fourth.
your unit?
I'm on the fourth floor,
Fourth
like,
floor.
but anyway, I
The
just want to say something. So my condo's on the fourth floor in the front. The other picture is the back, and there's a swimming pool on top of that section. And I will get to that story, no doubt, later. But in 2019, the pool flooded into all the units below. And my unit is on the front, the other side of the building, so I wasn't directly impacted by water. All right, so just stay here, and I'll tell you when to move forward. So anyway, I sold my house near Philadelphia. And of course, I couldn't afford a house in DuPont Circle area, but I was so excited to move into a condo. And I think living in a condominium could be the ideal way to live because you have a whole community of people there. You have your own private home. You can share amenities. It's more environmental, energy efficient. Um, and I just was excited. I thought it would really be great, but who knew? All right, so the next slide. Um, so I'm going to talk. You're in for a shock. A lot of people are in for a shock, and there's slings and arrows, and you don't realize what's happening. But over a period of years, when you have a number of different parties doing a number of different things, I connected the dots. So I'm calling this the anatomy of 360-degree multi-system predation. Because usually when you experience something, you have like one point of reference, like the board, but you don't know what's behind it. And I think that most things involve like a whole complex system of interlocking elements that you don't see. So I was going to call this clusterfuck, but what a clusterfuck is actually is like incompetence and random things going wrong. And this is anything but incompetence, that the forces behind this are extremely competent and organized. So I'm calling it full spectrum domination. And in the chart there is, I have another chart that's more legible, but it shows the interaction. There's the condo lawyer is in the center, and she writes the laws for DC Council. She's connected with DC. She manipulates the board. She works with the management company, the courts. So I'll get into all of that, but they're all interlocking systems that conspire to exploit owners. And also, I just want to say this doesn't happen in other countries, and I'll get into that, that there's a specific network in the US. Okay, so next. All right, so this is AARP's Bill of Rights for homeowners and associations. Why do they have to bother to have a Bill of Rights? You might wonder. And I would say that I've had every single one of those rights violated. So I've had to deal with foreclosure, being dragged into litigation, being unfair. So you can just having my autonomy violated, no oversight. I was not allowed to vote at one point. Okay, next slide. All right. All right. I guess we can say with this one, we don't have to go back. All right. So in 2020, one of the many times I had to move out of my condo because of mold. And I was just disabled when I was in the building and even after. I was renting the daughter's room of a friend's house, and she gave me this article from the Washington Post about this retired diplomat, James Patterson, who lived in a co-op and ended up living in his friend's basement. So his name's James Patterson, and the crime that he committed was he asked whether a contractor had a permit. So people that get targeted and retaliated against are not, I mean, there are a lot of minorities, elderly, but there are also people that are responsible and come to meetings and question or challenge the board on things. So now at this point, he was homeless and bankrupt, and his life was a nightmare, and he lost everything. He had $150,000 of legal fees. And then there was a question of who's going to pay? Is he going to pay the legal fees, or are his neighbors, the residents in the building, going to pay? So the residents in the building, there were 8 other lawsuits. So they were alarmed and they tried to mediate the other 8 so it didn't happen again. And in my situation, at one time, I looked up court cases online and there were 12 lawsuits in my building. So there's like the condo lawyer is hovering over people in the building and just looking for any opportunity to sue people.
Ooh.
So when I saw this story, I said, I bet you anything that the lawyer for that co-op is a member of the Legislative Action Committee of the Community Associations instead of this network of lawyers. So I called him up. I said, who's the lawyer? And I looked it up, and lo and behold, they were part of that network. And I would say every single horror story that I've heard, when I ask who the lawyer is and I look them up, and they're always part of this network. Now, I presented this last Tuesday at the Whistleblower Summit. I want to say, by the way, I'm wearing my whistle from the Whistleblower Summit given to me by Marcel Reed.
Yay.
Yay.
And there was a woman there who's an advocate for legal abuse syndrome. And she came up to me and she said she's working with a guy in Hawaii, and he had like these condo fees, and they were all in these fees, and they were all inflated, and he's in this legal thing. So I asked her who's the lawyer, and I looked it up, and they were very active in this network, and they had a chapter in Hawaii.
Oh, legal
So
abuse syndrome. That's a new one,
yeah,
Diane. Is
that's
that sort of like
yeah,
lawfare?
right. It's a form of PTSD, and it's a disability, and it's not. I have slides on that later on. Okay, so next slide. All right. Yeah. All right. So there's a system. So there's a coordinator, someone who coordinates. Then there's a system of all the parties, and then there's a playbook. Next. All right. So the coordinator is the CAI lawyer in my building. Her name is Jane Rogers, She's chair of the so the CAI is a Community Associations Institute, and it's a network all around the country. There are leaders in homeowners, there's management companies, there are collection agencies, there are industry professionals, and they're a lobby group. And their job is to like make money for for their lawyers, for their for their people in their network. So in 36 states and DC, they have a legislative action committee. So the people who do this are chairs and vice chairs, and they give seminars to lawyers on how to cheat homeowners, how to levy fines, how to do foreclosures, how to write and mark up legislation, how to influence laws, how to use the law, and how to protect the associations against the homeowners. So there was, all right. So Jane Rogers was my great misfortune and the person on the planet who's done more harm to me than anybody in my life. Um, so she won award Public Advocate of the Year from the CAI for many years, Educator of the Year, and she was inducted in the CAI Hall of Fame. Okay, next. So that's the coordinator. Then the next one is the system. So that's in the middle is the coordinator. So she manipulates the board, and I'll get more into that, like telling them not to mediate or making them suspicious, inciting hostility between the board, making them suspicious of people, misrepresenting. Go back to the chart, Alana. Yeah.
There, yeah.
So she manipulates the board. She does collusion with the management company. I'll get into that. Um, the mortgage company, I'll get into that. There were a few times where she induced them to pay money out of my account without my knowledge. DC Council, she writes the laws. I have details. I have abundant documentation on everything from multiple primary sources. And then the unit owners are sitting ducks. I mean, some of them are like docile and all this. So this just shows the next one.
Diane, what is CFM?
Oh, that's the management company. So this is just a list of what that chart was, that they manipulate condo boards, the management companies, the mortgage servicers, DC Council, and the courts. Okay, next. Alana, okay.
I did.
And then there's the playbook, a predatory litigation playbook. So one is they do fee splitting loopholes. So like you could have a fine, you could owe a few $100s, and then it escalates into like thousands and hundreds and thousands. And someone who might be able to pay back a small amount, they get so many legal bills that they can't do that, and then they have to go to court or declare bankruptcy. And then there are phantom fees, like they write a demand letter and they charge you basically to pay for the bullet that they're shooting you with. And then there are legal fees. They route things through the office, and they have late fees, legal fees, administrative fees, attorney's fees. And then it's like equity theft. And I've spent since 1977 building equity in places that I've moved, and I may lose all the equity I build. It remains to be seen. Okay, next. So that's the playbook. All right, the second part of the playbook is they prevent and avoid mediation. So so like when I didn't know anything when I'm a mediator. I trained, I trained to be a mediator. And I said, we can solve, every problem I've had for 20 years could have been, it wouldn't exist if I had an irrational board. Or if it was a conflict, it could have been resolved in an hour 20 years ago. Or whenever but they don't they don't make money if it settles early and amicably. They only make money if they incite adversarial relationship. So
Whoa.
they tell you you're not allowed to, they cut off contact with the homeowner. So they tell the board you're not allowed to talk to her, and everything has to go through the law firm, the billable thing. And then they exploit super liens, and then they weaponize timelines. So they accelerate court processes, so you're pressured into a panic and then you have to deal with it. And then they also lobby to preserve legal mechanisms that allow them to do this. Okay, next. So this is just a slide. I like that, you can have mediation, arbitration, negotiation, that you can solve all these problems, but they're all blocked off to you. And then you just get into like litigation, which is a black hole.
Wow.
And then they lobby to protect their rights, to preserve legal mechanisms. And they weaken or kill owner protection legislation, and I have lots on that. And the lawyers argue that fee caps or it harms the community. They have their like talking points. Like we can't mediate because it's a burden for the community and we have all these delinquents, but I'll get into that in more detail. And I have transcripts and from the hearings on these bills and what they said, which I've analyzed. Okay, next.
Oh,
All right, go
sorry.
back one. All right, so then if you have, so then there's a double one. One is you can have problems with your HOA no matter what. But if you also have mold in the mixture, then it's really a double whammy. So if mold's growing inside the walls and it's not dealt with, it grows into the adjoining units, but you can't see it. But it's invisible and it emits mycotoxins, which harm the immune system and it has neurological and all kinds of symptoms. So if you throw into the mix a board of directors, property manager, management company, association law firm, and adjoining walls and neighbors who can be hysterical over this, then you just can have like a Rubik's Cube of nightmare possibilities. And the other thing is that association use vendors like inspectors and remediators who have waivers of liability or they do shoddy work or they want them not to find things. So you can have false negative. You can inspect a building and not find mold. Like if you own a house, if you have an inspector who's bad, you can get another inspector. Or if there's something's wrong, you have control over your environment. But then the tragedy is for those who become sick and have no idea what their symptoms stem from a problem resulting from mold in the building, and they have no idea. And I know people, I mean, I think there have been deaths in the building or people who have symptoms. And 25% of the population has a genetic marker for not being able to process toxins. So we've evolved through evolution that if you're exposed to a toxin, your your immune system recognizes it and deals with it. But some of us don't, so that it accumulates in our body, and it's the HLA gene, which I have. But it's not good for anyone. So in 2011, when they were like remediating the halls, there was mold behind the wallpaper on every floor, and I took these pictures. And then the president of the board like washed it with bleach and hid it from everyone. And one of the workers saw him and he said, "Oh, you didn't see me." So when they were renovating, they weren't remediating, which they should have, but they were renovating. And I sent them several letters from different industrial hygienists saying, don't use vinyl wallpaper. It's a moisture barrier. It prevents the walls from drying and it creates conditions for mold. So I have continuous 20 years of giving the board information that they rejected. They were instructed to reject. So next slide. So 10 years later, I told them mold was going to grow behind the wallpaper. They used vinyl wallpaper. And 10 years later, there was mold behind the wallpaper on every floor, which I predicted and tried to prevent. But this is also, I'll get more into, this is 2 years after the botched remediation from the 2019 flood. Okay, next. All right, this is just I took a bulk sample from a vacuum cleaner from inside my unit and from the hallway, and I sent it to the lab. So, instead of paying, this is one thing a person can do without hiring a hygienist to come inspect. If you just want to find out if there's something there, it's $165. So the levels in the hallway were much, much higher than the levels in my building. But again, I figured like they won't listen to me. They don't believe me. Oh, I have a lab report. This is science. Here, look at this. They'll have to listen to that. But no, and I've done several ERMIs over the years. And in 20 years, there's consistently been Stachybotrys, Chaetomium, Aspergillus, Penicillium, Cladosporium, toxigenic moles in every report. Okay, next. All right, so in 2019, there was a flood and all the pool emptied into the units below. So I figured, oh, great, this is an opportunity. We have insurance. They have to deal with this. They have to remove the water damage. We can correct the whole problem in the building. So I thought this could be really, finally, after all these years, I could like live in peace and health. So I wrote a letter to the new president of the condo board, who I had asked to run, who was a friend of mine, But there were friends of mine on the new board, but the condo lawyer turned them all against me. So that happens a lot. So I wrote, there's a doctor in the building who also knew about mold. So we were the only two people. So I didn't want it just to Diane because I'm radioactive. So I included him. So I said, we believe we can help, benefit from our experience. We learned the hard way. This emergency can be a golden opportunity to make corrections in the building at a fraction of the cost. And we can improve all the indoor air quality from the whole building, and we can protect residents for the future. We know protocols, and we can help the least expensive way that solves the underlying problems. So it said some are afraid, some like freak out about the imagined cost, but they ignore the cost of the health risks. So I said, we also have documentation, lab reports, professional reports, photos over years, if you want any building history. And then it said mold has been inside the wall cavities of many units detected during renovations, and it was seen behind the wallpaper on every floor. I offered several professional recommendations, which could have been done relatively easily, but they were ignored. Okay, next. So within days, so he wrote me back and said, well, we have our people looking at it and we're dealing with it. So not listening to me. So days after the flood, it was obvious to me that the vendors were not following protocol and that preventable mold was growing. You have to remove, according to the Bible of mold remediation, the IRCRCS 520, you have to remove all the wet materials within 48 hours or at least 72 hours. And if you don't, it'll start growing mold. So, they weren't doing that. So I told the board they're not following protocol, and it could have been done cheaply, and they could have just ripped it out in the beginning much more cheaply than later when you'd have to set up all this equipment. So then the inspector in Logix, he drew a line in the hall and he said, on this side of the line, there's a perimeter, and we're going to remediate everything on this side of the line and nothing on the other side of the line. So first of all, a good inspector wouldn't study the whole building as a system. But aside from that, I wrote them and said, mold's going to grow beyond the perimeter. That mold isn't going to stop at the perimeter. It's going to grow under the carpet and behind the wallpaper, which it did. And I have pictures of those pictures of that. And then I paid an expert, HP Environmental, Ray Petrusek, to come out and inspect, and he wrote a report. Or he told them that mold would grow behind the perimeter. So 100%, every single thing I ever said to them since 2006 was completely accurate and true and happened, and they rejected 100%. So 2 years later, they botched the remediation. The mold got worse. Also in the summer, like months later, I took another ERMI test. And I told them there was still mold. I figured the better board would deal with it. So then they hired a project manager, Sarah Steele, to manage the project. But she knew nothing at all about mold. She might be a genius at managing projects. So go to the next slide. I'm not sure what that is. Oh, yeah. So then I said again, dear, members of the board, I'm a public health advocate for the Global Indoor Health Network. And they asked me to testify in DC Council in 2012 at a roundtable with Mary Che. And I said, I have a moral obligation to inform you that new mold is growing since the flood, and my symptoms have recurred, and 3 other people I know had reactions in the building. And people with symptoms are not usually aware of the cause. This should have been prevented. I'm requesting oversight. So I figured they're not going to listen to me. Let's get oversight. So I spent 5 weeks begging them for oversight. Then someone said, the board's not going to listen to you. Ask the management company. So I asked the management company, and they were willing to hire oversight, but then they had to ask the board. So the EJF, the new management company, was going to get oversight, but when they asked the board said no. So there was no oversight. Next slide. All right, so then this is still 2019. This is still like a few months after the flood. I wrote one thing, a request for reconciliation, because they were like not talking to me, and debriefing, that I wanted to debrief them. And then I sent another email saying for information and request oversight on the mold. So they wrote back to me. All right, so I had before that, you'll see later, I had $190,000 of legal fees and I had to declare bankruptcy and I had to get a bankruptcy lawyer and we had a settlement agreement, which is confidential. So she says to me, due to the settlement agreement and mutual release letter between the Palladium Association and yourself, the board, comprised of all past, present, and future members, which is not a thing, is compelled to refrain from discussing the topic of mold with you. So first of all, the word mold is not mentioned at all in the settlement agreement, and it would be insane. It had nothing to do with mold, and this also happened after the settlement agreement. And the other thing, this letter was written by Jane Rogers, and it has every letter written by every board member to me has been written by her, and she has all these tactics, manipulative, Machiavellian tactics that she uses. So actually, like a new board is allowed, has 100% permission to renegotiate any agreement made by a previous board. So here she said all past, present, and future members, like trying to, which is not a thing. And then she said they're not allowed to talk to me about mold. So the board will not be addressing any of the points you mentioned in your email letters, such as the need to form a committee. I figured they're not going to listen to me. Let's form a committee. There'll be other people, not me. I mean, I was just racking my brain to think of anything to override their barriers. Your perspectives on the industry, your credentials, knowledge, etc. And then they said mold remediation for the areas impacted by the water event, which they call the water event of Monday, May 27th, has not yet begun. Mold stabilization has taken place. Mold stabilization is not a term that anybody recognized.
Okay.
Like and at all these meetings, like the board, and these were like decent people, this board. The previous ones were very corrupt and mean. But these were the good guys who I asked to run it. But like everything they say, like, we've never dealt with this before. We're over, this is so challenging. This is so difficult. It's like, excuse me, hello, but it's like, we don't know about this. So anyway, next slide. So you can imagine my frustration at bearing witness to this. Okay, so now I'm going to shift gears a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to go into the DC Council and legislation. So in May, so Muriel Bowser, who's the mayor of Washington now, before she was mayor, she was on the Housing Committee and DC Council. So she proposed legislation for Condo Fee Fairness Act. I'm just going to make this a little bigger. In 2014 to amend the Condominium Act before unit association can foreclose on a unit. So the law was before we foreclose on you, when you're on the chopping block, you can have mediation, which is guaranteed to, it's really, really pathetic legislation, but it's something. So, so I started going to DC Council like in 2015 and talking to people and said, oh, there was a bill. So I found out it didn't pass. I said, why didn't it pass? So I got the transcripts and I saw why it didn't pass, but I'll tell you why. So it did not pass. So then next slide. So I'd been talking to a lot of people in DC Council and they proposed another. So Anita Bonds, who was the new chair of the Housing Committee and several other proposed another bill for condominium owner Bill of Rights amendment. And someone told me it was because of me that they proposed this. So anyway, this was there was a hearing on December 7th where people come and they testify either in favor for or against the bill. So I went to the hearing, and next slide. So I met all these people at the hearing who were dealing with similar things. And let me just see if I can change this. So again, the pathetic bill is to require mediation before foreclosure. And then they're going to create a condominium association advisory council, the CAAC, to establish rights for owners. Next. All right, so at the hearing, the testimonies for or against. So everyone who was testifying in favor of the bill were people who lived in condos who had horror stories. They supported the mediation, they were owners, lawyers, legal society, legal counsel, and the testimony were all true stories of harm and trauma and fees owed and evictions and attempts for like board members to evict you and then buy your condo and to flip them. And that happens more than you would imagine, or maybe you would imagine. And people who like owed fee, they could afford fees, but then they lost their homes because of the legal fees. And they had mortgage foreclosures and also a story of successful mediation. Those testifying against the bill were lawyers, condo lawyers, and they all had the same talking points. Oh, they're all these delinquents, and their mediation is a burden on the community, which it's not. If you know anything about mediation, it saves time and money. It's not a burden. So they use the same talking points, like catastrophizing and absurd, exaggerating what goes on. So, and also in the transcripts on 2014, verbatim, different lawyers from the CAI made the same verbatim language, exact same talking points in the next one. Okay, next. All right, then another dirty trick is they put you on a block list. So I had condo fees. This is what they manipulate with the management company. That I had condo fees I paid on time, and then I got a letter saying it was refused and it was rejected. I don't know why. Next. So at the hearing, I met a woman, and that she was also there, and she got the same letter on the block list from her building, which was the Watergate. So I said, "Who's the lawyer?" So her lawyer was the chair of the Legislative Action Committee in Maryland, mine, and they both had the same management company, CFM, and we both got the same block list. She ended up being evicted, where they just refused payment, but then they route you through the lawyer's office. You have to pay administrative fees and legal fees and stuff like that. Next. All right. All right. So part is about blocking communication. And also I want to see if I can change my screen never mind. So I agreed so this part is about how their refusal to talk to me. So I agreed to pay my back fees if we meet. So I withheld condo fees. If you live in an apartment, you can withhold your rent if they're not taking care of the building, but you're not allowed. The laws are different for condo owners. So I agreed to pay. So the only way I could ever get them to do that was if they took me to court. So in the hearing, I told my lawyer, ask each one of them if they know that I tried to mediate before we went to court. So 3 witnesses for the HOA, they asked if she advised you to mediate, would you? So they said yes. They asked the property manager. I asked him to mediate. He said, yeah, but it was turned over to our attorney. The board president, he said, yeah, he knew that was trying to mediate, but our attorney says, what should we do? And they tell us to file a lien. And then the other guy on the board said he was aware of my offers to resolve it, but he said we couldn't because of the high legal fees, which were $269 at that time. The trial ended up being $120,000. And then there was the appeal. Next. Dodd Fisher, I brought in a mold lawyer from Michigan, Pro Hoc Vice, to enter my account because I didn't trust my lawyer with good reason. So he said there's mold, and he knew a lot about mold. He also thought the whole trial was a sham, and he said it wasn't a foreclosure action, it was an eviction because I tried to resolve the matter. I offered to pay, and they refused. Next. All right, then I got another foreclosure notice in 2015, and my neighbor, whose name I kept out, he wrote to the president of the board, and he said, our friend got a foreclosure notice. I'm a friend. Can we please mediate this? He said, let's talk. Let's see if we can prevent this. And he says, no, this is in the hands of our attorney. Next. So he wrote him again. And he said he spoke with others in the building. We think it's in the best interest of our community to mediate a resolution to avoid foreclosing on a member. And he said, I can't discuss this with you according to our attorney. Next. And by the way, in DC Council, she testified that, when she said, we offer payment plans, we offer to mediate. They don't, so she lied to them, and she's contradicted in what she says to me and what she said publicly. So this is the bill. So then I found out later that, oh, the bill passed. I said, oh, great, the bill passed. So she marked up the bill. This is her marking it up. and she deleted all the rights to mediation. Like literally has a line going through all
Now,
the
who
way.
is the she again?
Jane Rogers, chair of the
Oh, the
award-winning
Jane Rogers again.
money
She's up
making.
there able to mark up bills.
Yeah, she
Wow.
worked. They work DC. I mean, I'm going to meet with DC Council maybe tomorrow, but they come in and they say we're lawyers. We know we're experts. We can write your legislation. So they write legislation. They have all conflicts of interest. They write legislation which
No.
is power to exploit owners, but the council don't know. Like I think all the parts of the system are not. Some of them know what they're paying apart. I think some of them don't know that
Oh.
they're playing a part in the scheme.
Hmm.
So the next one. So one is they deny the right to mediation, and the other one is the CAAC, the committee to protect owners. They put the lawyers on the board. They put the foxes on you
Yeah.
know, they put all the predators on this committee to protect owners.
Wow.
And then next, so then she brags about it. She wrote an article, she wrote a newsletter from her big law firm, her big predator law firm, saying, oh, this legislation passed. And originally we're going to impose mandatory mediation, but instead we're going to have file liens. We're going to give them notice. So the big deal, they changed the name from condo owner rights to rights and responsibilities. And the big advantage they give us is they're going to give us notice. So I testified like in DC Council. I testified 9 times in DC Council. So I did afterwards too. And I met privately with Anita Bonds, the chair of the Housing Committee. And I told her I was being foreclosed. She said, I won't let this happen to you. I'm not going to let this happen to you. And then I call her back and she wouldn't answer and she would like, it would never happen.
Oh.
Um, so what was I going to say? So I testified again. I said, this law is worse than nothing. The original bill was pathetic, but it was something. This is like worse than nothing. Next. All right. So then we had a condo board. We had a meeting like 3 times a year. You have a meeting with the board and the community. And there was a guy in he was away. They were away for a year. They had their condo fees on automatic payment and we changed management company. It didn't go through. They weren't notified. So she sued that. There were all kinds of reasons to sue people, all different ones. So they contested it, but they lost on a technicality, and the judge had to grant it to them. But the judge said, you have one malicious board. And then at that meeting, the board president was treating me like I was delinquent, and I wasn't. I was paying my condo fees. So I wrote to the management company November 2014. And so I'm just writing to confirm that I'm paid up with my condo fees. So I have neurological problems with organization and executive function. So I put things on automatic, which we do anyway, to make sure it gets paid, so I don't have to deal with it. So I said, if I'm missing any months, tell me exactly which ones and I'll pay it. But as far as I know, I think I'm paid up. So then, like 2 months later, next slide, I
What
get a certain.
enormous condo fees, and you have to wonder what you get for that amount of money each month.
So that I get served with foreclosure that I have to pay 38,000 some dollars this is in January, like by February 18th. And if I don't pay it by then, there'll be an auction sale. So I had no idea what to do. And I called everyone and I found out that there's a DC Housing Council legislation and that they have a lawyer who I could talk to for free for 5 hours or something. So I got this lawyer, Craig Butler. He found an error in the calculation. So that stopped this notice of foreclosure for $38,000. Next. So then February, I got another one for $26,879, the corrected one. So I have to get paid 26 this much by March 24th or 26th, or there's going to be they're going to sell my condo. I had no idea where these numbers came from. I don't know how they came up with that. Maybe
Oh.
I missed something. Maybe there was a late fee somewhere, but I have no idea. So he scheduled a TRO hearing, which I'd never heard of. It's a temporary restraining order hearing. So if you have something like this, you can have an emergency hearing with a judge to stop it, and then like 30 day a temporary restraining order. Then like you have 30 days to have a real hearing. So we were going to challenge it. All right, so we were going to go in on March 24th, like 2 days before the auction sale, and we were going to challenge it. And I thought I was going to get vindicated, or maybe I'd have to pay a few thousand late fee. I didn't know what, but my lawyer was prepared to challenge it. Next slide. All right, so these are when I did my other foreclosure bankruptcy, I had to go through her time records to like figure out how much of her time I should pay for. So I'm not paying for her time using to so on the day of on the 24th, she spent 4 hours reviewing the complaint and preparing for the TRO hearing. And then the next day, she spent 2 more hours. She spent 6 hours preparing for the hearing. So 2 hours before the hearing, my lawyer calls me and tells me it was canceled because Chase paid the money. So if she thought she was going to win, if she spent 6 hours preparing, you better believe she would go into the hearing. But I'm guessing she thought she was going to lose. So she had to figure out a way to cancel it. So she got Chase to pay. But then I found out I had no idea what happened and why it was canceled. So later I found out that Chase paid her $38,000. So they actually overpaid her.
Who's Chase? That's a bank. Your
Oh, that's
bank? What?
my mortgage company.
Your mortgage company.
Chase, $3.6 trillion company that I have a case against them now on appeal. All right. So this is like, all right. So anyway, it was canceled. They overpaid her. Then on another separate instance, in July 2016, I went on the board with my daughter and her baby on the roof deck, and the president of the board was there, and he said, "You're not allowed on the roof." So I said, "Why?" He said, "You're not in good standing." I said, "Why?" He said, "You're not paying your condo fees." I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Our lawyer said that you're not paying them and your mortgage company is paying them." So I spent a few hours on the phone and I found out that Chase had been paying my condo fees for 15 months. And I have also been paying my condo fees for 15 months. So they were getting 2 checks a month. CFM was getting 2 checks a month from, and no, they didn't tell me. And because I don't know if she could have known, she should have known, but she gave them false information. So then I called Chase. I said, you can't like pay money out of my account without telling me, and anyone can lie to you. Anyone can give you false information. They said, "That's right. We don't check if someone tells us that our interests or if we have to protect our interests. You sign a deed of trust that we can do this, and we have to protect our interest. So if someone calls us, we're going to pay, and we're not going to." So I said, "Anybody can lie to you, and that's right. They won't inspect it." So
Whoa.
I have a whole other case against Chase now of that going on since beyond that. All right, next. All right, so I ended up with $190,000 of legal fees, and I had to declare bankruptcy. And my bankruptcy lawyer was the only good lawyer I ever had, and he said that it was the worst travesty he'd seen in 30 years. But all right, next. All right, so there's a double standard in housing. So that if you rent, so I'm renting now. Also, they should be paying for me to rent this, and I hope to get it back sometime. But if you suspect mold, that they're required by law to inspect it in 7 days and to remediate it in 30 days. So they did that. But in a condo, you don't have. So I sent this law actually into the condo board. They said, "Oh, we don't have to do that. That only applies to rentals. That doesn't apply to us." So like really in your face, they're saying, "Yeah, landlords have to do this, but we don't. We're the phone company. We don't care. We don't have to." So anyway, tenants also have legal leverage. So there's a dispute, I'm going through this a lot with AI and I'm writing legislation, but that tenants have rights that condo owners don't. There's no law for condo boards to remedy mold. Next. And they also don't have to do like reverse mortgages. So I filed an injunctive request in my counter thing in 2011. I was requesting, an injunction to oversee remediation of mold. And I mean, I've been begging off and on, like for oversight for remediation, like every way I left no stone unturned, as you can see. Next. So then, this is just more about weaponizing laws and retaliation and drafting, legislation. Next, we don't have to spend time on this. You get the picture. All right. So anyway, so then I went to like the mayor, the attorney general, the DC council, all the agencies. So I really like went to every system, and so they said, we can't help you. It's a private contract. You have to get a lawyer. And DC Council tested 9 times, nothing happened. The Attorney General said that they don't deal with condos and consumer protection because it's a private thing. And a lot of us have lawyers who threw us under the bus and seem to be working for the other side. And I can tell you stories about that, including my lawyer did not name expert witnesses, which a first-year law student would do. And in my trial, the judge didn't let me have expert witnesses or to present any of my testimony or any of my documents or any of my pictures or any of my lab reports or any of my medical records or any of the expert reports. I had expert reports, and the judge who was in bed with, didn't let me have it. So also the judges know the lawyers. Like every time I'm in court for a status hearing, like Jane is there and she's running around to like different judges for status hearings on the same day, and they have like a huge amount of cases, and they're clogging up the courts with unnecessary, cases that should never exist or that could be easily solved. So anyway, everyone said, "Oh, we're so sorry this is happening to you. We can't do anything." So not a soul, not one person of everyone I dealt with over the years. So you can go through the next slides a little quickly. So this is just like a partial list of people who I reached out to, members of staff on DC Council, the DC Housing General Council, all this next. And these are just some of the agencies that, I thought I could do a reverse mortgage, but they don't do that for condo owners. I wrote this letter, like multi-system failure and proposal, and I sent it to like 75 people in DC government, and like nobody could do anything, maybe until now. Next. So there's multi-system, they weaponize assessment, the government abandons you, there's forced litigation, they manufacture fee explosion, they don't let me have evidence at trial, compound foreclosure demands and bankruptcy. Next. So I had 7 legal cases, and I'm wondering if Key Tom is a case, like a whistleblower case, like if there's waste, fraud, and abuse, if you expose it. So I don't assume I have one, but I'm thinking that the courts, that there's waste, fraud, and abuse on the courts. So just like little old me, one person on a problem that should never exist, that there were 7, there was my initial case. Anyway, they're my cases. Then I filed a case against the HOA after the flood, and then it went to federal court, then it went back to DC court, then I had the appeal, and then the foreclosure case. So just like all these cases compound. Right. And I also had like 2 multi-door mediation sessions were like ridiculous. You can't really, there's no mediation. It's just an illusion and a way to enforce domination. Go ahead. So this is Deborah Goonan has a website on independent communities. Like if there's litigation, it could take over your life, you become the enemy, it strains your relationships, you'd be ignored. It's just like all the nightmares of what happens. Like once you get into litigate, you might go broke, stress. There's no escape. It's
So
an
all of
escape.
these seem like they fit your case. I mean, your
Yeah.
experience, right?
Yes. She writes, yes, this is HOA lawsuits next. And then there's legal abuse syndrome, which was coined by Dr. Karen Hufford. It's a form of, she died, she's a wonderful person, and she created a training, like according to the American Disabilities Act, it's a disability, and you're allowed to have an advocate. So I didn't know, I wish I had known her at the time of my case, I would have brought an advocate into court and it would have changed everything. If you bring an advocate, it changes like they can't do this with you anymore if you have an outside party who knows the game. But if you're just the victim and you don't know the game, they can do it. So So it's an invisible, it's not a psychological disorder, it's a psychic injury, and the cure is justice and vindication. So, and it's a preventable public health issue, and federal courts are, mandated by the ADA to make accommodations. Next. So anyway, it's a diagnosable traumatic stress disorder from bullying, intimidation, harassment tactics deliberately used against litigants during foreclosures, health-related bankruptcies, family court battles, probate, guardianship issues, false accusations, retaliations, and other issues brought before a court. Next. And these are just some of the tactics. They defy, deny, delay, deplete, destroy, devastate, decay. And I just had a case with Chase. They did everything. They defied everything. They delayed everything they could to the last minute. They just use all these tactics. And the judges, even judge, I thought I had a decent judge that she approved of, she granted all their motions and not mine. This is with Chase. Next. All right, and Deborah Goonan, who wrote that list, she has, she has an independent communities, and she's saying once you get into an HOA, there are good ones that don't have these lawyers on them, but she said they're financial risk, structural safety risk, infrastructure failures, dictatorial. It's a dictatorship. It's absolutely a dictatorship. It's not a democracy. We had in the building, we tried to form a committee to use the room that we had meetings in to make it a common room or a party room or to fix up. And the board disbanded our committee. They wouldn't let us meet. They disbanded our committee.
Diane?
Yeah.
Excuse me, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
This is a really great presentation. Thank you so much. It should be required viewing for anyone who's about to purchase a condominium to check into the nature of the HOA. But what I wanted to ask in this particular case, wouldn't your HOA have doesn't part of the fees go for payment of insurance? And doesn't the building have insurance to cover the cost of things like mold remediation if there's a water damage anywhere in the building? And wouldn't that just be automatic? You pass it on the insurance, they take care of it, that's the end? What happened with that?
The lawyer doesn't make money if you do that.
But does the condo have insurance?
Yeah. Yeah. And with the flood, I don't know what it, yeah, but the lawyers don't make money.
Oh,
She got 6 figures off of me.
yeah, that's so disgusting.
Yes, it's so disgusting. All right, next. Yeah, so yeah, all these problems are with normal people, none of these are a problem. These are all doable. Okay, next slide. All right, so from full spectrum domination to full spectrum liberation. So this, thank you for the opportunity to do this and to record it, that maybe I can show it to people. But the first thing is sunlight, and then exposing what the system is. All right, so next, I don't even know what's next. All right, so I wrote legislation with Claude for AI. Everything that happened to me, we came up with an act, like the mortgage company has to notify people before paying money, or that, they have to do mold. There are 40 different legislation, but there were three immediate actions. One is that the government should have an advocate, like someone that we can call if there's a problem. There should be a crisis hotline, and for an emergency if you're facing something. And then I had a 2-stage accountability registry, because I was thinking you can if people are getting away with stuff, you can give them an opportunity to redeem themselves before you expose them. So the first stage is you can report this and give them a chance to correct it. And then if they don't correct it, you can have public transparency. So these were that. Then I have all these other laws, about mold. And this is also, these are just some titles from Deborah Goonan's, will legislators find a way to save our failing condominiums beyond no HO governed community? All right, next. I just pulled these out, some titles. from Deborah Goonan's website. Next, I think that's a blank. Oh yeah, so these are just something, and this is a letter in 2006. I mean, I'm pretty much done, but I have sort of a collection of things like that. In 2006, there was a letter to the board president saying there was stachybotrys in the hall and the carpet has mold and that these were a problem and that this is a health issue. So I have these continuously for over 20 years. Next. And then in 2010, I had Greg Weatherman, who's prominent Aerobiological Solutions. Everyone inspected my apartment and the halls, and it was not originating from my condo, it was from the halls. So here he's doing an airflow thing to show that the air flows from the halls into the units, that it comes out the supply duct and it goes down the hall. And we have vents like in the kitchen that suck air in. So the air comes into the units from the hall. And those are just some of his books. And also I'm showing you it's just the tip of the iceberg. Then 2 years after the flood, remember I said there was a perimeter. So see the line on the carpet. So, the day after the flood, David Young from InLogix CIH, who's a defendant in my case for being negligent, said, we're going to draw a line here. We're going to remediate everything on one side of the line. And I said, mold's going to grow on the other side of the line. And you can see that in both of these pictures that the mold grew on the other side of the line. I paid Ray Petrus. The other thing is that in April 2021, 2 years after the flood, 2 years of totally botched remediation that I told them how to prevent from day one, my joints started hurting like out of nowhere one day. And then I found out they were removing the wallpaper on the front of the building, not the water impacted one, the other side of the building and that it released the mold behind the wallpaper released spores. So it goes through the whole the system and the ducts. So they were removing wallpaper on the 9th floor and my joints were hurting on the 4th floor without me knowing it.
Mm.
And then they detected mold, but then they should have immediately, it was not a renovation, it should have been a remediation, and they should have used scrubbers and containment, but they removed the rest, but not properly. So this is just the report, and he was saying, anyway, he did an inspection and he wrote a great report that I supplied to the board and to the management and to the project manager, Sarah Steele. So she was doing this side of the building. So I have all this correspondence with her. I said, look, you have an opportunity, you can prevent future mold growth now. I said, you remove the insulation inside the walls, or go on to the next one. And you can use, that's me, early on, this is like a symptom of mold. Like I just blew up, it's inflammatory stuff. Next. All right. So in 2008, I had a good remediator and he helped me mold proof my condo. So I pulled out all the insulation inside the wall, you see on the left side. So before that, my neighbor flooded into my unit and the water was coming down. Her kid left the water running. And I figured, oh, there goes a year of my life, when that happens, and that there was mold and chatomium. So we removed the insulation so that when the water comes down, I said the building is built I should have said this in the beginning, in the 1970s. And they had it wallboard with paper-backed wallboard and insulation in the middle. So when there's a leak, the insulation holds the water, and then the paper is cellulose, so it has mold grows on the cellulose. So if I remove the wallpaper, then if there was a flood, it would just dry. So that's how you mold proof. So I took everything out and then my neighbor flooded on me and then there was no mold the next time. So I told you can mold proof the whole building, remove the insulation. And then when they were doing the holes, you can see there, picture me there was a part I couldn't reach from inside my unit. So I pulled out the insulations. You can see black mold on the insulation. So this is in the walls throughout the whole building. So this was in 2021. So I sent the report to project manager Sarah Steele. I said, you can prevent future mold. You can correct all this now. They blew it in 2019. We can do this now. There's wallboard that's magnesium oxide that's water, moisture, fire, and rodent resistant. I said you can prevent rodents because they go in moisture. So she ignored me. She 100% recreated conditions for mold growth. She used wallboard, they use wallboard in the hallway that's not even moisture resistant. There's a big rodent problem in the building now. And also I told them a few months ago, my tenant, who's someone who's staying in my, told me how to like prevent rodents. She knows about buildings. And they didn't do there, you have to do a ventilation things. They didn't do that now. And there's so all right, next. All right, so this again, now that you've seen everything, you understand this
Oh,
picture.
yeah.
And there are other buildings. So all around the Jane Rogers, there are other buildings. So there's I call it the SBJ Club, the Sued by Jane Club. And there are other people in my boat, but they were all afraid to speak out. And oh, by the way, my neighbors wouldn't speak out. They were, four people told me that they were afraid of retaliation. They wouldn't say anything.
Hmm. Hmm.
So they write the laws. The judge, um, the trial was ridiculous. So the judges know these lawyers, they're in there all the time and they rule for them. Like they didn't let me have expert witnesses. They let my doctor testify as a treating physician. But when he got up, the judge said, I'm not going to listen to him.
Ah.
He said
Ah.
that. And then Jane Rogers, of course, she says, he doesn't know anything. She could have gotten the mold somewhere else. And the doctor, he never even came to her apartment to check. No doctor goes to the apartment to your
Yeah.
apartment. Nobody does that. They look at your report that, I mean, nobody does that. They're your doctor.
Hmm.
And in the judge's final ruling, he repeated verbatim every single thing that she said, like she could have written his final argument.
Oh, no.
Then my legal fees were $120,000.
Ah.
My lawyer said there's some law, it's like disproportionate, like you're only allowed to charge $8,000 to collect a fee. You're not allowed to charge disproportionate amount of money to collect a fee. So anyway, if this happens to me, it happens to everyone, and you know that there's no amount of education or lifelong being an proactive, or that can protect you from this kind of domination, protect me from this kind of domination. Next. Or that might be the end. Yeah, I think we can end on that one. All right. So, well, so I'll just say right now, my case against the HOA is on appeal. I have a case against Chase because they paid more money without my knowledge, and I told them not to do that without my permission. And I'm writing legislation. I also wrote a building health survey. There's a new board. The president of the board of my building is a wonderful person. He's an activist. His name's Robin Bell. Like people I know him. Um, he doesn't really know much. I'm gonna like talk to him. So there's a legal strategy where the new board can sue the old board. Like I don't want to sue my neighbors and have them pay for sins that they didn't
Hmm.
commit. But I also don't want to suck it up. And I'm 76 and I want to start my institute and I want to stop paying rent and I want to go on vacation or take my kids out to dinner, which I don't do. So
Diane, could I
yeah,
ask, you said at the beginning that these types of problems are unique to the United States, that
yeah,
condo owners in other countries don't have these problems. Could you elaborate on that?
yeah. All right. I mean, I haven't done a review. So I have a friend in the building and she lives, I forget where she lives, but I think she also has condos in the Netherlands and other places. And she said this doesn't, I mean, it's a very small sample, but I think this is very CAI. Like I said, I mean, even in the US, they're wonderful boards and they're wonderful condos. Actually, the building is great now, like except for the health. And I don't want to say this out loud, but I found out that a woman in the building died a few months ago. She was 68 and she was like a foreign service, like a really good person. I looked up, she had gastric cancer. I mean, I would never say this to her family or even I don't even want to say it to that. Maybe I shouldn't say it here. But I looked it up and you can't say that any one health problem is associated with the building. But you could say scientifically if there's biological mechanisms that are associated, I looked it up and that they suppress the immune system, that you can say that it's plausible and there could be a scientific connection. You can't say anything, but so I wrote a building health survey, like how long have you lived in the building? Where do you live? How many hours a day do you spend? Do you feel better when you go away? Do you have these feel like react when you come back? Do you have a list of these symptoms? Have you been diagnosed with this? So there are some surveys that exist, but none of them really covered everything. I mean, even like little things like no one would know, like if you're young, like, my period stopped. That's one of the things that happens like in mold. But then I went away for a week and I got it.
Oh my.
This is like 20 years ago. So like I could ask that as a question, or when you go away, when you come back, does your skull break out in a sweat? Or there are little things that you wouldn't know. So like I haven't told I actually wrote a letter to the board president. I said confidential. He didn't respond, and I don't know if he saw it. And I just want to find a strategy to it's delicate because there's like group hysteria and people are in denial and people, want to shoot the messenger and people are being harmed and property values. But the thing is, there's a way to correct. I have a protocol to correct the whole building, but one is you have to rip out all the walls and all. They put insulation back too, and all the insulation. But you can hire like like lowest unskilled labor, and you can hire a lot of people in a short period of time just to remove everything. And then you just like coat the inside of the wall of the unit with like magnesium oxide or clay or something like that. And then you put in magnesium board and then you're done. But to get the people responsible to pay for it. So I want to find a way that they don't have to pay for it. And there's a strategy for appeals where I could have like amicus briefs and we could settle and we could force like Jane Roger, their insurance companies, like the remediators and the people, their insurance companies could pay. So there are creative legal strategies that I didn't know anything about. And there's a way the new board, a win-win. There's a win-win for this. So anyway, so
Thank you. That's a really big picture. I mean, I appreciate your struggle more than ever, Diane, hearing and seeing all the details. Your persistence is remarkable. Your tenacity and the invaluable learnings that you've had through this. I hope that I mean you would be an expert witness for the whole big picture of this corruption. It is an abuse and a corruption. It's appalling. It's really appalling.
it's outrageous. Yeah.
And it seems the whole culture of the HOA is not to solve problems. Like you are all, I don't know how many people own condos in this building. You're all homeowners. You all have a vested interest. You have a stake in this. And it would seem to me that the purpose of having a homeowners association and various condo rules and the fees and everything is to, of course, maintain the to not solve problems, but to make, to make the lawyers rich. And
Right.
to you sap the equity off of any homeowner that rocks the boat and may suffer from some problem, and they end up paying the price, and then the lawyers make money, but the problem never really gets solved. It's a very sick, twisted structure, seems to me.
Yeah. Also,
Yeah,
I think I
you
was gonna
think
say,
it's the mafia doing terrible things. This is like a professional mafia.
these are homeowners. These are people.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
mean,
the other
if
thing is
the
that
purpose is to solve the problem, it's not that big a deal. That's why you have insurance, just get it done. I mean, that CAI seems just poisonous,
well, it's the LAC. It's the Legislative Action Committee because like a lot of condo lawyers, like someone I saw my high school reunion who I went to high school with is a really ethical, very decent lawyer, and he's a member of the CAI. Yeah, they're like it's like I'm a member of the American Psychological Association, but I'm not doing torture. They're like a small and we
Yeah.
actually have now like a Palestinian justice thing happening. But I just want to say like one more thing that I think 100% of everyone in the building, like right now, has zero clue of this entire thing that I'm talking about. Well, no, not 100, a few people that were sued, like one or two, but they don't know about this. And I need to figure out a strategy to deal with this.
Can't
So.
you have what you've just given us printed into a booklet, published and distributed?
Oh, okay. Well, that would be easy enough.
It would be easy enough.
Except explaining it explains it, but or I could, or the recording will help. So
And
I'm
but
great.
then to make a published pamphlet, you have the slides already.
Uh-huh.
Now you have the visuals, and then you have the narrative. You just gave us a terrific narrative. Get that digitalized narrative we just recorded and
Oh,
use the software to put it into print.
did you do notes on this?
Well, the note takers should have taken some notes.
Good.
We'll
All
get
right.
all that out.
Okay. Yeah, Carol.
I think you raised the larger question of how corrupt our entire legal system, the courts and the judges are, because my family is facing a situation where we're really concerned about the courts and the judge and the lawyers that we're encountering because it's just so over the top, outrageous.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, the court system is, a lot of it is rigged. And also like owners, like you can't even get a lawyer a lot of the time. Yeah, there are a lot of lawyers but I don't know what your situation is, but, and also it's called multi-door, I don't know, the mediation. It's like this huge waste because, they fail. And even if they succeed, they fail. Like I had a really good mediator and my dear friend and colleague, Rich Rubenstein, came with me as my support person. He's 88. He's like a JD. He's like, he was director of the School for Conflict George Mason. He's like really prominent. He's like a wonderful, like I couldn't get a better mediator or a better support person. And they were like trying to hold my hand and telling, it was confidential mediation, but just basically to accept the lesser of two evils, like either to eat shit or go to trial. And I couldn't do it. Like, but if I would have succumbed to it, and like emptied out the rest of my retirement money um, to keep my condo to pay this for Chase. Um, it would have been a successful mediation because it would have been a resolution. And every court mediation I've been to has failed. It's just reinforces. And even like Rich and the mediator were like, they were just saying it's a system. Like, this is terrible that this is happening to you. This is terrible, but you don't have a choice. It's better for you to accept this because it's the system. So I didn't,
What
and
keeps you persisting, Diane? They will
I
tell you just give up.
nevertheless, I persisted. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah. What keeps you persisting? What about you keeps you
oh,
going?
but I filed a motion for summary judgment and the judge ruled against. Anyway, um, truth and justice, like I can't, first of all, like in the beginning, I never imagined this was going to take 20 years. And like at every moment, it's like, if I just do this, I can live in health and peace. If I just like in 2012, if I go to court, the judge is going to hear and see my facts and then they'll do this. So you don't, it's like the frog in the, whatever it is.
You kept following the carrot while the stick was over your head.
And the other thing is that during a lot of it, um, like when you have mold, I mean, and during a lot of it, and you know this a lot, like I was severely fatigued and I couldn't read and write. And it's sort of like at every moment, you're dealing with your body, your environment, and the system working against you and trying to have a life. I mean, I would have been teaching, writing, speaking. I mean, I'm like a lot better now, and I have a new doc. I'm even better now. I have a new doctor and FODMAP diet, low FODMAP, and other things. I'm like finally feeling like new life, like more than I have in a long time. But I was like completely dysfunctional. Like I couldn't do anything. It's like the symptoms of mold make it hard, impossible for you to deal with what you have to do. So, but I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
think
know. I first met you because you were up there on a stage at a peace conference doing your 9 dots, your original thought on peace. And, you were really moving along in your professional peace work and, the writings that you were doing. And I've seen the cost you've paid in your disability caused by the mold in your life, a real setback you've
yeah.
had.
So,
Somewhere, somehow, if there's justice, you would be paid a lot of money
well,
for what you've been dragged through on a number of levels.
in the realm of possibility. I mean, obviously, nothing's gonna make me whole. There's no amount of money in the world but this was, sort of like on a spiritual dimension, this wasn't on my list of things to do in my life, but also like this happened to me. Like this happens to other people, but like so many people did so many things to me that I documented and I connected all the dots. So I think I'm in a position.
Wow, big, big. Whoa. Well, I'm glad you were at the whistleblowers conference. You got to present some of this there, and you have your whistle now, because you're definitely a important whistleblower now on the map. So, anything else anyone wants to say in concluding? Let
Thank you,
Diane have.
Diane. Thank you so much.
But thank you for
Yeah.
the opportunity. I'm like really, really grateful, and I hope this recording can be useful and make a difference. So thank you.
Here we all
Yeah,
do.
I think that you're really creating a new map, as you're pointing out. And this new map is going to enable people in the future to wake up. You're helping the awakening that's going on. And it's just, it seems that the people who do the most to open up and awaken people are generally the people who have to go through a whole victim
Yeah.
phase on behalf of the population,
Suffer.
and go through all this Sturm und Drang just to wake you up to what was going on. And I hope that this somehow or another we can get this out to the world, because I've known other people who have horrible trouble with their condo associations. And it just seems, and that was one of the reasons that, we just, when Daniel and I were moving and so on, was like, we've got to stay away from condos, and homeowners associations can be pretty bad too. So we actually were able to land in an area with a homeowners association that was pretty inactive, you might say. It was a yay, you know. Um, and of course, we also are happen to very, very fortunate to be in a neighborhood where everybody has 5 acres. And so if you have 5 acres and the neighbor does all sorts of
Yeah.
stupid stuff, it's like you don't have to really be, it's
Keep the
not in your
mold to
face.
themselves.
Okay. You can kind of ignore a lot of stuff. But something like this where you share the walls and you're trapped in this whole legal nightmare, I really feel for you.
Yeah.
But I really think this is going to make a difference in the world in the future. It's just taking so much out of you. I'm really sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you. But one more
Yeah.
thing I want to add. They're buying up huge swaths of land, like in California, Nevada, Colorado, like to make HOAs.
Right.
They have swimming pool, they have, amenities. But like if you get a job somewhere and you move somewhere, you may not be able to buy your own house.
That's right.
It's an entrapment. So one thing I'm hoping, so I'm meeting Robert White is the council member, chair of the housing committee. And he actually, I testified in front of him. And then like several weeks later, I was at a memorial service for David Culp, who was head of the Friends Committee on National Legislation, Nuclear, who I knew. And he spoke there. So we had a friend in common. And he also like came to Busboys and Poets with Andy on Cuba and stuff. So, and then I saw him at a house party. So he was running for Congress. So he won the primary for Congress. So, my wish is I might meet tomorrow with his staff is to do model legislation in DC. And then if he goes to Congress, next year, then maybe we could do national legislation.
Yeah,
So,
there you go. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
you
We
know, there may
call
be
it
some.
entrapment. It's a new form of enclosure from people being
Yeah, exactly.
enclosed off the common lands 500 years ago. Now, even if you can afford to buy a house, they're still trapping you into
Hmm.
exploitive conditions. So this has been outstanding, Diane. Do you have any suggestions for anybody who comes across this information and wants to do something or support you or work with you, or what's what 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 can you suggest?
I
They
don't want any
this
personal
you said there's
support.
a growing movement.
No, there are people around the country. There's Deborah Goonan, and there's a guy, Patrick Johansson. We did a panel the last 2 years at the whistleblower. It's just a recorded Zoom. And there was one that was pretty good but it was just people telling their stories, but it wasn't connecting the dots and it wasn't referring to the CAI by
So
name.
Deborah Goonan has a leadership in this movement,
Well,
and is do
she
you
has a
want to put
website with
your any
articles.
con? Do you want to put any contact information for yourself when we post this for the
Not,
notes?
not for this.
No,
I want to like do I want to prevent nuclear war. That's,
you have other things to get onto.
I want to,
Okay, this will be your
I want to do I want to like start my institute that I would have done 17 years ago. And yeah, I want to do my life and I'm 76, so I have to like, it would
yeah.
help. I hope I get
To
money.
get through this one and move on. Okay,
Now
thank you.
thank you. I'm really grateful.
Thank you.
I really appreciate all of you. Thank you for this.